Good morning and welcome to Breakfast Extra this Saturday morning. Now, this week we're starting with a very serious topic, so forgive me if today's monologue comes without its usual wry humor. Over the week, Canada's Prime Minister Mark Carney stepped forward and did what many world leaders had been avoiding. He said the quiet part out loud. He ripped off the Band-Aid. He took down the sign that said open for business and he replaced it with the one that says enter at your own peril. Now, in one speech at Davos, Carney made it clear that the world global order is over. And for Africa, that message carries serious implications. So, let's talk about what Davos really gave us. Mark Carney said something this last week that made a room full of powerful people, world leaders, suddenly stop smiling. He said the old world order is over, not changing, not being fixed. It's over, it's gone, it's extinguished. That was awkward, because Davos exists on the idea that the system might shift a little, but it will always survive because of courtesy. Countries can be polite to one another, even when they know that their interests are selfish, that they can smile to one another while bending them over and not backwards. Carney said no. He said the truth is this. The rules were made and told to us to believe only for the strong countries. They followed them when it helped them, they broke them when it did not, and now they are no longer even pretending. The nice language is gone, it's over. What Carney was really saying is simple. The world is no longer about working together. The world is about who has power. Trade is no longer friendly, money is no longer neutral, even climate talks now come with plenty of pressure and also demands. So, the world has split. It's split into groups, security groups, it's split into trade groups, technology groups. Countries are picking sides, supply chains are being rearranged, and nations are no longer judged by good intentions, but by what they control. That is today's world. Now, let's talk about Africa and how we play here. In this new world order, Africa has suddenly become very important. And that should make us alert, because when everyone wants your attention at once, it usually means you have something they need. Africa no longer needs to pretend that it's bringing something or anything at all to the table, and that's because Africa is the table. Africa has minerals the world cannot build its future without. It's got energy resources everyone is chasing, land and sunlight for food and power, and a young population that will still be working long after others have grown old and died. Let's say it. Yes, see, Africa matters now. But attention comes with pressure. Because in this era, nobody's coming to help you for free. They're coming with deals, long deals, deals that sound friendly, but quietly, they tie your hands. They'll smile in public and tough talks will happen in private. And this is where Carney's warning actually becomes very useful. When powerful countries compete, they stop taking others for granted. And for once, Africa is not being ignored. Africa is being bargained with. And this is good news for us, if and only if you understand your value as an African country. Because having power is useless if you do not use it wisely. Now, let's bring it home here to Nigeria. In this new global order, where exactly does Nigeria stand? Are we clear about what we want, what we bring to the table? Or are we still relying on old friendships and big grammar? So what does our relationship with the United States, for instance, really mean today? Let's take that as an example. At its core, it's not about friendship, it's about interest. America, like every other major world power, does not partner out of sentiments. It partners where it sees value. Yes, Nigeria gains access, we gain security cooperation, investment signals, and global relevance. But those things matter, I agree, but they're not gifts. They come with expectation. And that is the hard part. We often adjust our policies, our trade position, even our global votes to say, oh, we're in good standing with you. And we open our markets, we wait for our turn, we comply. Usually without asking, what exactly are we getting in return? So the real question is this: who is setting the rules now? And are we walking into these relationships with clear demands and clear limits? Or are we, Now, the terms already being set before we arrived there, we're just too grateful to be included. Because in today's world, respect does not come from history or handshake. It comes from leverage. And Nigeria has leverage. It has population, energy, geography. It's got influence in West Africa. The problem is not that we lack value. It's that we never always insist on it. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, let me bid you welcome to Breakfast Extra for a beautiful Saturday morning here. Do stay with us. We've got very interesting conversation coming. My co-host will be Queen Celestine. And of course, for the next 3 hours, you're going to love it. Thank you and welcome. Well, once again, it's a good morning to you and welcome to Breakfast Extra. My name is Mazin Rapil. Now, it's Saturday and we have important conversations lined up this morning. We begin in Southern Kaduna with a very big report here, where communities are challenging official accounts of recent church attacks. While police figures remain low, residents insist that over 163 people were abducted. We examine the gap between official statements and lived realities and why truth and trust matters in responding to insecurity. Then to Rivers State, where the impeachment crisis involving Governor Siminalayi Fubara remains unresolved after a court adjourned the case indefinitely. We ask what this delay means for governance, accountability and political stability in the South. We also turn to youth and politics as questions grow over why Nigeria's young people remain underrepresented in real power despite their numbers and energy. And still ahead, with 2027 approaching, we examine calls to amend the Electoral Act, focusing on gaps exposed in the last elections and what must change to restore confidence in the ballot. Also, we'll take you to Badagry on Waka Waka World today as we explore Nigeria's growing influence in global English in our extra special, and also close the focus on Africa, where we unpack Africa's role and leverage in global conversations from Davos, like we've just heard from inside of our monologue. That's our package for today, so do stay tuned for all the conversations. Now, let's go straight into our very first major big report in Kaduna. Tell you what, let's start it the right way. Now on Breakfast Extra this morning, we turn to Southern Kaduna, where grief has turned into anger. Communities say the story told by security agencies does not match what they lived through. While police insist only a handful were taken, residents say more than 163 people were abducted during coordinated attacks on churches and villages. Now, this is not just about numbers, it's about truth, it's about trust and whether the state is listening to those under fire. So we had our correspondent out in the affected communities to verify claims, speak to survivors, and examine the gaps between official statements and the local accounts. What he found raises serious questions about reporting, response time, and also accountability. Here's our special report by Emmanuel Bagudu.
Okay, yeah, step here. Suka kore so koma da mu da wasu kananan yara sun kore ku sofofi sun ce mu koma ku koma gida so kuna da yawa kenan.
Victims of Sunday's church attacks confirmed their ordeal, describing abductions and terror inflicted by armed assailants. Many expressed anger after local officials initially denied the attacks.
When they are coming, people run out from the church, they come break the door. The people were men inside the yeah.
This is the door they broke.
Yes. See the way they scatter everything, our instrument, they scatter everything. Even the thing where we harvest keep inside the church, they scatter everything, they bust the this is the
for what they go a local government chairman sent to the media. It surprised me. If not the will of God, I have died this morning. Because
what did he send to the media?
He said, "What? There's nothing happened here. Nothing happened. Where the news
it's fake.
It's fake.
Yeah, what he says is fake news. Is it fake news? Confirm. Is it fake news?
He say not. That is a reality, I'm telling you.
You are a victim, sir. You are kidnapped.
Government is Udobemu. Organization Sudobemi. Even the world at large. They should assist us because we are in a very, very critical condition. We don't have food.
The total number that kidnapping, number
167, but 11 escaped.
Out of 167, am I not saying 11?
Yes, sir.
Am I not saying 11?
We have 166 people.
The government's not population list, Baba.
No. We are just telling. They are just telling people lies. Yes, sir.
Lies, go.
I'm telling you.
Lies.
We have 166 people inside bush.
Inside bush.
We don't know the condition they are.
Residents provided details of the attack while showing journalists around the 3 churches targeted by the assailant.
Ni na yi kokari ne na kubuta a cikin hannunsu, amma ga inda ma aka sa mutane nan sun zauna flat a kasa before aka sa su.
Some families have already decided to relocate to Makeli for safety.
Wallahi ana kwashe mana su ne. Suna kwace su, suna zuwa suna kwashe kayan.
Su waye?
Su bandage. Shi yasa ba mu da abinci, shi yasa mun kwashe mun kawo mu boye kayan.
There's banditries. They are disturbing. They have no right to keep something in your room. They don't have something. Guys, that very day they collect my phone and my money that I have. Last 2 weeks they kidnapped my children and my wife. This the second week they kidnapped. How can I live here?
Kidnap you?
Yeah, of course. I'm among them.
You can't escape.
Yeah, I escaped from the road.
I'm kidnapping family.
Then my wife has come back and my child is there too. Now.
How many children?
There are 3.
They are with them?
Of course, plus my neighbor. I cannot live here.
Ni dai yanayin da mun shiga wahala kuma wannan ya zama mun kamar na yi mutuwa ne inda ba mu samu wani assistant wanda an sama wannan garin ba ni gaskiya zan bar garin nan wahala bendin nan yanda suna takura mu ba dama mu je gona mu yi noma ba dama kuma in samu abin da zan ce da yara na ma na kasa in sa su a makarantu.
Uncertainty dominates Kurminwali as residents struggle to recover and wonder about the safety of those left behind. In Kurminwali, Kaduna State, Emmanuel Bagudu, News Central.
Report there by Emmanuel Bagudu, who joins us now on Zoom. Emmanuel, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a very interesting story that you tell there in that report. In fact, I was here with my mouth agape as I listened to one of the victims say that his child is still in the bush with the culprits. Emmanuel, but first of all, tell us exactly where this is and what the situation was upon your arrival.
Well, thank you so much. It was a situation of, playing with the lives of people, talking about the earlier denial by the Kaduna State government via its Commissioner for Internal Security and Home Affairs, and of course the Kaduna State Commissioner of Police, and then of course the local government chairman of Kajuru. So it was an issue they wanted to, sweep under the carpet, but of course, local media was silent, but we international media we couldn't be silent because we know our routes and we were able to get the details and force the government to come out to say the truth. So that was Kurminwali. Kurminwali is located on the Kaduna-Kafanchan Highway in Kajuru local government area of Kaduna State. And of course, on Sunday, 18th of January, terrorists surrounded 3 churches, CNS1, CNS2, and of course, Equa Church, where they abducted 177 persons, out of which 11 escaped. So we have a total of 166 currently in the forest with the terrorists, calling for help. And the Kaduna State government have responded and have retracted their statement, apologizing to the people that they will do everything possible to bring back their loved ones back to them in Kurminwali. That was what really played out. That was what happened.
Okay, so thank you for that summary. I'm going to come back to talking about the details about who sent out the message, the false message, and how we got to the false numbers that were given or the fact that they said nothing actually happened. But I wanted to know how accessible this community is.
It is very accessible. It is very accessible. Funny enough, coincidentally enough, I first visited Kurminwali when I was around 6 years old, somewhere around 1991. Sorry, I'm telling my age in public. When I was an altar servant with a white priest that time, as a small boy, as a Catholic alt servant, so I've been. The community is very accessible, right? As I know it, I applied there.
So,
right,
so,
going to
so Emmanuel,
school,
we're not
so
talking.
it has been very accessible.
So Emmanuel,
it's just 5 minutes. Yeah,
we're not talking about communities that are way out of, perhaps maybe away from major highways. This is like 6 kilometers from a major highway, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, just 6 kilometers. So that worries me because it seems like these bandits are beginning to come even. They're beginning to get more brazen and are coming out to these communities more and more now. But now let's talk about the information that was given by the local government chairman, according to one of the respondents that you spoke to just now on that report. What kind of information was passed, and why exactly do you think that the numbers were not correct? Why exactly do you think that it was told that nothing actually happened?
Okay, immediately the news broke out. The Commissioner of Police and the Commissioner of Internal Security and Home Affairs swing into action. They went to the community. As far as they are concerned, they didn't see bullet holes. They didn't see houses burnt. They didn't see people, in disarray. So they assumed nothing happened. So they told the world that the community members were lying. And then allegedly, the local government chairman told the community not to say something happened. And of course, they went to the public, and then after a security meeting, they told the governor, allegedly they deceived the governor that it was fake news. So I think they have an excuse of making that fake news, and the excuse is just not enough. But that excuse is the fact that they didn't see anybody, they didn't see any. Normally, when there's an attack like this of that magnitude, you normally see houses being burnt. You never see bullet wounds, just like we have always shown in Katsina, Kano, and of course, Zampara, where you see bullet wounds and all that. But in this case, nobody was hurt. There was no gunshot. They just surrounded the community on gunpoint and then took 100 people away. So that was what prompted the Commissioner for Internal Security and, of course, Commissioner of Police to say that nothing happened because there was no substantial evidence to actually prove that something happened. The only people that can actually say it happens were the community members who experienced it. So they wanted to undermine. They underestimated the power of Nigerian media, probably, and of course that of international media, that they can actually afford to actually sweep this story under the carpet. Nobody will know about it. But in terms of fact-checking, you're talking about newsrooms that are very serious and that are very serious with this job. They have mobilize their correspondents, whatever it is, get to that community and tell us what really happened. And we want that within 5-6 hours. And we did that. And within 12 hours, the statement was retracted. And they confessed that actually they are the ones that actually gave the fake news, not the Nigerian media, not the international media. Yeah.
So I'm very glad that you actually were a part of that process to making them recant that statement about it not being real. But let's talk about the way this operation happened. This modus operandi seems very unlike, and you stated that yourself, very unlike what we see in other regions or other states or other places, even in Kaduna. You said it yourself. There would be burnt houses, there would be gunshot, evidence of gunshot, but this is very different. Does this point to perhaps maybe a different kind of bandits or group of bandits?
Yes, these terrorists are, learning new skills every day. This particular attack was surprising. Nobody was killed. Even the injuries were minor injuries. You've seen those injuries. They are minor injuries.
Bagudu, I am so sorry. Bagudu, I am so sorry. I'm going to have to take a break and come back to you. Do give me just a minute, and we'll be back to this conversation. To our viewers, do excuse us. My apologies. We'll be back after this with that comment from Emmanuel Bagudu on the situation in Kaduna. Welcome back. And it's still our first big report here for Breakfast Extra, where we're talking about instances in Southern Kaduna where communities have experienced abductions, and the reports vary from what the local authorities have reported to high authorities. We have Emmanuel Bagudu, who was telling us from before about a question that I asked you, Emmanuel. I'm so sorry that I had to cut you for technical reasons there, but I had asked about the modus operandi of the operation here when it comes to this community and how it differs from what we see in other instances. So you were saying, Emmanuel?
Yes. So like I said, the modus operandi, just like you asked, is different this time around. It's no longer the issue of coming to burn houses. It's no longer a style of coming to shoot bullet guns on the walls of the houses. It's not an issue of shooting guns on the air. They just came in quietly. They knew that these people were having their church service around 9 a.m. They came and surrounded the 3 churches, which are just adjacent each other, not far from each other. and they created a particular space where they asked them, all of them, to lie down on the floor. So it's no longer shooting. They didn't adopt the normal style of shooting on the air, normal style of hitting people. They didn't adopt that style. They only did that quietly in a way, very well calibrated manner, so that nobody will even know what is happening. And you know, that bush is so lonely. The environment is so lonely, no basic amenities, no, of course, there are instances there. We were able to make phone calls there, we were able to do video chats there, but of course, in terms of, you know, trying to locate that community, in trying to even know what is happening in the community, you will not be able to know because it's a thick forest. So that now deceived the government, that deceived the Commissioner of Police, that misled the Commissioner of Internal Security and Home Affairs. It also misled the local government chairman, Dr. Madaki, who was forced to believe that nothing happened. These things, there are no evidence to show that anything happened. So we are going to tell the world that it's fake news.
But what about the list?
Of course, the media have to just go and investigate and find out what really happened. You know, the media's investigation is all-encompassing. You won't just rely on details from the community. You also have to go to neighboring communities who have seen the exodus, the procession, the exit of these hostages and the terrorists. You have to be factual before you be able to, you know, say the government is lying. Are you able to establish? We're able to establish that the government was lying, and they accepted they were lying, and they apologized, and they have started making moves to bring back these hostages back home.
So I saw a list there, and I'm wondering whether the authorities didn't see that list. Wasn't it put forward to them? How come? And then again, what about the local authorities there? Are there no police installations in that community?
Yes, it was admitted. It was admitted by the governor. The governor visited the community, Governor Obasani. After it was established that actually an attack happened, the governor visited the community and also admit that the community needs, first of all, an access road, from that will connect to the expressway, which is 6 kilometers, and of course the community needs a hospital, and of course he promised that he would deliver that within the year, and of course he's calling. The governor also admitted that just like you asked, there are no police outposts, there are no any military. The only thing you can find there is a military checkpoint, which is 6 kilometers from the express, which is located at the Kaduna Expressway, and of course. That's those, you can just see 3-4 soldiers, you know, mounting a checkpoint at that entrance. So that is what the governor said, that he's calling on the chief of defense staff, who is from Kaduna State, to make it haste and then create a command center or rather a theater command within that axis, because the terrorists actually living in Regional. They have taken over Regional community. Regional community is located between the FCT and the Kaduna State border, very close to the Kaduna Abuja Expressway. So, but since the military have, you know, surrounded that particular area, they just remain inside the community and they go out there to harass vulnerable communities who are hard to reach. So what the governor is saying is that if the command or theater command is established, that issue of Regional will be taken care of completely, and that area will be completely, we're talking about 50 to 100 communities in between Kajuru, Kachia, and of course Chikun local government. They are the ones suffering from those terrorists that are living around Regional. So the governor admitted that these things have to be put in place, police outposts, and of course, a military command center. Yeah.
Emmanuel, I want to say thank you very much for bringing this report and, of course, seeing how it has affected change. I'm very glad that it was a News Central reporter that was at the helm of it. Thank you very much. And you know why this really hits home for me? That's because 3 months ago, I was on that highway. To think that somewhere on that highway, 6 kilometers away, is where this happened really worries me. But Emmanuel, thank you very much. Really appreciate your efforts here at News Central. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we're going to be moving on to our first big story today, and it's going to be a very interesting one as we move to Rivers State. But first, let's take a break, and we'll be back. Welcome back. It's still Breakfast Extra. Now, the legal battle surrounding the attempted impeachment of Rivers State Governor Siminalayi Fubara has entered uncertain territory. A federal high court has adjourned proceedings indefinitely, effectively pausing the governor's challenge against the State House of Assembly and extending an already tense political standoff. Now, this development matters beyond Rivers. It raises serious questions about judicial timelines, political pressures, and how prolonged legal uncertainty affects governance, public service delivery, and also stability in one of Nigeria's most strategic states. So joining us now to have this conversation are Ibieme Oscar, National President of the South-South Youth Initiative, and Osigwe Ahmed Moma, who's lead counsel at Robson Legal. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me for this conversation this morning.
Thank you. Good morning. It's nice to be with you. It's a pleasure being with you.
Good. Now, Osigwe, I'm going to start with you because over the week we were together. You spoke to me on the news, and we didn't have much time, and that's why you were invited. I'd like to know, now that we've gotten here, from a legal standpoint, what does an indefinite adjournment mean in a case of this magnitude?
Thank you very much for having me once more. And the indefinite adjournment, adjourn sine die, allows parties not to further multi the water, not to unnecessarily overheat the polity, and allow the matters in court to continue. In River State, we've had an avalanche of court cases. It's difficult to keep track of them. Several matters are still pending. More are trying to are just being instituted, and that creates a general atmosphere whereby it's difficult to track what's happening. So the court is saying right now, all parties basically at the trial stage, hold on. At the impeachment stage, also with the CJ's decision, hold on, let us deal with all pending appellate matters, appeal matters before we come back. So it gives warring parties enough time to at least probably allow some diplomatic avenues and political avenues why the courts, look at the matters pending before them and attend to them one after the other. In reality, River State has been a very difficult time for the ordinary people. There's really been zero to no governance there. Of course, the court is fully aware of this. One political upheaval after another, and that's just an unfortunate situation. So I think it's a very responsible thing to do. It's the right step, and we need to, when judiciary is doing things right, and in River State, most times, almost every judgment that's come out, it's difficult to quarrel with any of them. There's been an avalanche of illegalities, if you ask me. The purported notion of wanting to impeach the governor and deputy in the same vein, I think it's odious, it's distasteful, everybody can see it for what it is. It is a political move trying to use a legal process, and it should be frowned upon by the court, and I think that's exactly what's happening. Also, let me put this in perspective. Let's not forget that there are genuine questions that are being asked. Genuine questions whether or not these offenses are impeachable. We shouldn't forget that some of the actions, because we are not saying Fubara is a saint, Wike is the demon here. There are questions to be asked genuinely. Some of the actions that led to all of this is questionable. We saw the legislative complex being brought down. We saw the notion where 4 members all started acting like the representative of the state and doing something as sacred as passing a budget for the entire state, thereby technically depriving the people of Rivers their say, their votes, their decision to have a feel in the electoral process. So it's a difficult process. There are no saints, there are no demons here. The legal process will the court is looking at everything closely, and I'm sure at the end of the day, most Nigerians will be satisfied with the decision of the court.
Well, Osigwe, listening to you, I'm wondering whose side you're on. Because on one hand, you say that it's the right thing to do and you're glad, and then on the other hand, you say there's plenty of questions to be asked. And I do understand what you're saying. But then, does this actually help due process, or is it risking delaying justice? From what you said, that's exactly the question that comes to mind.
No, well, it's because as we speak now, there are several pending matters there, and it's really a political matter. It's not really a legal issue, and I'm sure the court is fully mindful of this. The pending matters have to be dealt with. The questions to be asked have to be asked and fully answered before we come in and start asking for other questions. There's still a question, because the last time the Supreme Court generally said, agreed that the current speaker was, there was no evidence. That was really the question. There was no evidence that there was a valid defection. Now, that doesn't mean they ruled that the action or the defection was valid. It just says there was no evidence. And I think another party, Labour Party, also brought a matter challenging this same question. Well, this is the evidence. This guy is actually left, and that has to be answered also. So there are several of these questions that are still pending there. And the concept of, there's the appeal to appeal the interim order that was given to stop this process, this entire impeachment process. There's an appeal on that. And the court, you also have to look at the appeal first before the process can continue. Like we said during the week, that's a brilliant step. That's the right thing to be done. You don't need the appeal to keep going on, telling the CJ to constitute the 7-man panel, whereas there is an order stopping in, and then they're questioning that order and all that. So I think it's
Osigwe, we're having issues with your connection there. I think perhaps if you can check that, or maybe it's...
You don't. Okay, confirm if you can hear me.
I can hear you now, but I'd like you to pause for a minute so I can ask Imiaba a question here. And Imiaba, let's talk about political accountability from a youth perspective now. I'm wondering whether you think that... I'm wondering what message you think this sends when it comes to political accountability, especially in particular the River State as it concerns it.
Thank you very much. I think I've said it in several fora. I'm going to take my view from the youth perspective, from the civil society, and from the moral aspect of it. I have said it in several forums that as we speak, it will be very difficult and very challenging to demand for accountability from the incumbent governor, the executive governor of Rivers State, His Excellency Sir Siminalayi Fubara. It will be very difficult because right from his inception in this very first tenure, it has been political tussle upon political tussle, where that led to the state of emergency for complete 6 months. Rivers State suffered a lack of democratic values or governance in the state for complete 6 months because of the political tussle that was being orchestrated by the FCT Minister, Barrister Oweke, the former governor of Rivers State. And that brings us so many questions because this same governor, this same former governor of Rivers State, Barrister Oweke, when he was the governor, he never gave attention to governance, neither did he give attention to the youth. There was no youth employment in the state. As we speak, we are still working on how Oweke can give accountability within the period or the duration he served as a former governor in Rivers State. Now, we also have a question. Why is Oweke always synonymous with having issues when he's a minister? This is the same thing that Oweke did when he was the supervisory minister of education and the minister of state for education. This same thing Oweke did. At that moment, the then governor of Rivers State was Right Honorable Chibikolo Amechi. Chibikolo Amechi was also facing impeachment saga from Barrister Oweke. And this is what we saw coming. And all of this was what we were expecting Barrister Oweke to have actually not done very well. But it's unfortunate that Oweke, even as we speak at this point, is always trying the best he can to make sure that Rivers State is not in peace. And that's our worries. Because he tried this during the period of Amechi to impeach Amechi with the 5-man House of Assembly. That didn't work. He went further to do the same thing during the period that now he brought Siminalayi Fubara for as governor, and he's doing the same thing. We're asking a question. Why is Oweke always looking for people to impeach? And the question again is, if there is any former, or if there was any former governor that actually was supposed to be impeached during his tenure as the governor of Rivers State, it's Barrister Oweke. A man that did not pay pension to pensioners, a man that never pay promote civil servants, a man that never embarked on any skill acquisition program, a man that never embarked on scholarship, a man that condemned scholarship, that it was not a good thing for a government in place to sponsor Rivers youth outside the country for scholarship. Meanwhile, his own son was embarking or was on scholarship by him and Rivers State government. His son just graduated recently from UK as a lawyer. Now, as we speak today, Oweke has sponsored all his children abroad for educational purposes. Then you also condemn the people of Rivers State for going abroad for scholarship. Scholarship board that was actually lucrative in the days of Right Honorable Chibikolo Amechi.
How much better has Fubara done when you put him side by side to Wike? And how have these processes affected his efforts? Imiaba.
As we speak, I think one of those good things we have recorded by His Excellency, the executive governor of Rivers State, Siminalayi Fubara, is that within the period he emerged as governor, he gave adequate attention to governance. Now, I am from Kana local government area in Ogoni, Rivers State. Now, if you go to my local government, especially in Bori, I can vividly tell you in a clear terms that as we speak at this point in time, what happened is very simple. But it's a year of Ezo 1 weekend. They embarked on some projects, in the Bori, and those projects that by years of weekend embarked on within the period he was the governor was also abandoned. Those projects was abandoned. As we speak, His Excellency, the Azeri Governor of Rivers State, has completed those internal road projects in Bori, kind of local government where I come from. In other local government, the governor have also done the same. In the same vein, the governor has promoted all those students, all the youth of Rivers State that was actually due for promotion in the civil service. He has promoted them. The governor has also increased the wages. I am not a civil servant, but then the civil servant has been enjoying within the period the governor emerged as a governor. Going forward, youth are also being faced with some level of attention. The governor is giving attention to youth, even though he has not been able to empower or to employ, do his own personal employment within his tenure due to the political saga that we have in Rivers State. Going forward, the governor has been giving attention to everything, the road construction, most of the abandoned projects, like the Songhai Farm in Thai local government. Songhai Farm in Thai local government, the governor has also given attention. Unfortunately, yes, will not allow
that's what the governor has done. So how is the impeachment process currently affecting his efforts? Let's get to that bit.
That's the point I'm coming to. These are all what the governor is looking forward to complete. Even the complete road that is ongoing right now, the construction of the road that is ongoing now, the governor was supposed to have completed this project. All of this has been abandoned. Now the impeachment saga that is going on, led by Martin Zamewule, loyal to years of wicked, we saw all of this coming. Because even when in 2023, when His Excellency was being nominated by the FCT minister, the former governor of Rivers State, we also saw that is the years of wicked also nominated all the local government chairmen in the 23 local government area. It did not stop at that. When the governor emerged as the governor of Rivers State, years of wicked was also responsible for all the people that was appointed as cabinet members, known as commissioners. Years of wicked also was the one that set up the in-house election in the Rivers State House of Assembly that brought Martin Zamewule as the Speaker of Rivers State House of Assembly. All of this was orchestrated by years of wicked. And then at that point, I remember I was among those that went on different media fora saying it that years of wicked was doing this as a witch hunting to the governor of Rivers State. And this is exactly what is playing out today. All of these are just a process to witch hunt the governor, to make sure the governor do not have any branches, or to make sure the governor does not have the local government chairman, does not have the House of Assembly members, or does not have the commissioner. How can you personally clear the terms that a governor of a state will be given a condition to appoint only 5-man advisors? And this agreement that Years of Wicked said, agreement is agreement, that a governor of a state will be limited to just have 5 advisors as a governor, and that a governor of a state will not have the opportunity to appoint his own cabinet members known as commissioner. How then do you actually say that it's not assembly?
Imiaba, just a second. Now, you've said a lot. You've pointed out what the governor has been doing. You've pointed out how the issues have affected his efforts. And you've also noted how the FCT minister has been in the middle of all of this mayhem. But then again, the one people that actually are very important are the people. And we seem to see very little representation by the people. Well, maybe we do see civil society and also organizations like yours, but we don't see the people represent themselves. And I'm wondering exactly why. I'm wondering where the people stand. I'm going to let you stew on that for a second while I ask Osigwe a question, but I'm going to come back to you, and that's what you're going to be answering. Osigwe, I'm wondering what you think regarding the impeachment process. How much of it seems to be driven by law or politics?
It's driven by politics. First of all, I want to predict right now that the entire process will be a nullity. Our constitution does not envisage impeaching a governor and deputy on the same vein. These are two separate, or the deputy. Now, lump-summing them, consolidating them has made the matter, in my very honest and astute position, dead on arrival. So I believe this entire process will go. But of course, I've also said the last time I was saying that Mr. President erred by declaring a state of emergency and suspending the governor like a school prefect or a schoolmaster suspecting a school prefect. But the Supreme Court, didn't side with me, and I think that that's a very unfortunate precedent in Nigeria that years down will suffer. But I'm still going to hold to my position, even though the Supreme Court, which is the final law. So of course, when I said earlier that we can largely support and be happy with the decisions of the court, well, we are human. Sometimes things go against us. So I don't think this entire process is legal. I think that this process is outrightly political. But some of the questions, for example, we tend to think that Fubara is a saint, Wike is a devil. I'm not interested. I believe these are one and the same thing. It's 10 and the same pence. These are the same thing. If the Teneham issue won't be here, these are the same PDP people who I believe orchestrated an elaborate plot to deprive the river people, Nigerian people, of their rights. Let's not forget the presidential election in the last presidential election in Rivers State. I believe till date that the Labour candidates in that state suffered because of these two people, in my position, in my opinion. So I don't think Fubara is a saint all of a sudden because he's fighting with Wike. No, I think this is the same thing. And I think it was thuggery, pure thuggery, to bring down a state built with taxpayers built complex for political reasons. I'm not going to support that, and I do not think it makes any sense for him to constitute for people to pass the budget of the state. So I am indifferent here. Fubara is not my friend. Wike is not my friend. I do not care about them. I think these are the same politicians who are exploiting the people, and Fubara is playing the victim card in this situation. And I think it is a victim. I do not care. I do not have any feelings. I don't think these politicians really care about Nigeria. I'm only looking at the legal process. And for the legal process, there are many questions that have to be asked one after the other. Some right, some wrong, but generally speaking, there are questions that I think will fail. But I'm going to look at it dispassionately.
Yeah.
Whether or not you can...
So yes. You tire me out when you're running around the field like that, because I'm trying to still decide exactly where you stand. But you do make very, very, very important points here. But I'm talking for the people now, and I'm wondering exactly how the people can trust the judicial system itself. Do you think that they can trust it in this process?
Oh, yes, I think so. That's what I'm saying. I think that even though personally, I mentioned that I had thought that the Supreme Court will declare the state of emergency as null and void unconstitutional to the extent with which the president did it. And of course, I was wrong in that opinion. They didn't side with me, and they didn't side with many of us. They sided with the president and his team. And so that does not being the case. If we look at the majority of the judgments that have come in this matter, most of them have aligned with common sense. Most of them have aligned with the law. I think the judges in this matter is doing the right thing. I think we should have confidence. And that is why I'm still saying that because they started this process with the governor and deputy in the same vein, I believe that this matter will be dead on arrival, and there are several other questions that will be asked. But it is important to understand that in an impeachment process, it is typically not impeachable. Appealable. You don't necessarily appeal impeachment because the question will be, does this amount to gross misconduct? That question is not a question for the courts to determine. The Constitution is clear. You don't appeal that. What you are likely going to appeal is the process that led up to this. Okay. And that's what I think Fubara and his team are going to be looking at. They're going to be checking, did they start this right? Did they follow the laws to the T? Did they follow everything to the letter? And when they start asking that question, I think that there are several actions that are falling left, right, and center. But the Constitution is clear. Impeachment as it is not necessarily a legal question, it's a political question. It's left for the House, the panel to decide that this is a gross misconduct. And as soon as they agree gross misconduct, you can be impeached if you have the numbers. That's why the number is quite high, 2/3. That's quite a number there.
Okay, then. Yeah. A quorum. Thank you very much, Osigwe. Imiaba, let me come back to you. My previous question, representation, the people. Why aren't they representing themselves? Why do we hear less and less of the people and where they stand when it comes to this impeachment between the House and the governor?
Now, when you talk about the people, I wouldn't know which sort of people you're talking about. Either the assembly member or the normal... I'm
talking about the people of Rivers State, the people that matter. I'm not talking about the assembly. The people seem to be... I said this last week. I said they seem to be docile. We don't hear anything from any representation when it comes to the people. You're here as a youth representative, I know, But the people on the streets are least represented when it comes to this. They're the ones that need the governance, and we don't get to hear how they feel about it. They don't have real representation when it comes to these issues happening all the way up top. Why is that? Are they not concerned, or are they just, despondent about the whole situation since it's taken so long already? I'm sorry that's long.
I think sincerely speaking, I want to say that on the street of Port Harcourt, if you go to the street of Port Harcourt, or if you walk around within the street of Port Harcourt in our local government and our community, you will get the impact or the feedback of the people. It's just simple. What is going on in Rivers is a very clear case that the people are not comfortable. Yeah, my brother talked about being neutral. Yes, maybe he is actually not a resident of Rivers State. He might from Rivers State, but based in Abuja. But I based in Port Harcourt, a resident of Rivers State, and then based in Port Harcourt, based within the states. So it's obvious that the impact or the negative implication of what is going on right now affects me directly because I reside here in Rivers State, especially in the midst of the economic challenge that we are being faced right now. And then we still have a political challenge when every other state, like Akwa Ibom State, Enugu State, and other states are busy unveiling their airlines. Rivers State is busy having political tours being orchestrated by the former governor of Rivers State, currently the FCT minister. And we also have this assumption that is it that Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is interested in this political tours going on in Rivers State that has not been able to call yes or wicked to order. Because we were thinking, just like my brother said.
Let's leave the president for a second. Let's focus on the people. I say this because there seems to be a very big gap between grassroots and the governor. Because if there was a grassroots representation, perhaps we would have heard more from the people themselves. So if there is no grassroots, if there's no true grassroots in Rivers State, then there's already something wrong with the process, and that's what I'm trying to get at here.
Now that is where I'm coming to, because it's obvious that if actually have been paying attention to the happening in Rivers State, you will always hear when the governor has several forums, in several occasions, the governor has warned that people to stay away, that people should not speak, people should not talk, everybody should remain silent. And you also observe that recently or from the beginning, the governor has remained silent in the midst of all these challenges. Though he has been doing some actions, he has been embarking on some actions in a silent manner. But then the people of Rivers State at the grassroots level has been asked to remain silent and also not to take an action. But I'm also very, very much happy about the decision of the governor for people to remain silent and for people to remain non-violent. Because if you look at it from this perspective, because of the decision of the governor for grassroots support to be reduced, if the governor decides today that, Rivers people, rise up to the realization to this event that is going on. I have said it in several forums that personally, as a national president of the South Side Youth Initiative, that personally, if I come up with my organization, it's very possible for us to stampede the Rivers House Assembly from going about what they are going, because we believe, just like my brother have said, we believe that as we speak right now, what is going on in Rivers State is not a constitutional approach. Rather, it's a political witch hunting. And where is it coming from? Just recently, the FCT minister... let me inform you.
I need you to summarize because we have to go. We have another conversation. So I need you to summarize real quick, please.
Okay, let me just inform you that the reason for this second phase of the political talks we're having recently is because the FCT minister wants a supplementary budget that will actually accommodate about 15 billion per House of Assembly member loyal to him. According to the FCT minister, this 15 billion naira will be given to the House of Assembly member loyal to him as constituency development project. Meanwhile, this House of Assembly member has been given 350 million naira each. Nothing to talk about. In the various constituency, there is nothing on ground for the 350 million that has been given to them. So the reason for this second phase of the issue is that the FCT minister wants a whooping sum of 400 billion naira as a supplementary budget
that's
added to the already existing budget.
That's a very big allegation there, and you've moved us into another topic. And I really want to have that topic, but we do not have time. Miaba, I'm wondering whether it is possible to have you on the show again tomorrow so that we can talk about this. And if you can substantiate it, that would be appreciated.
I'll be very much available because this is the reason for the second phase of this action. The FCT minister is just interested in river state resources. He's not interested in the welfare of river citizens. And the governor is actually asking the grassroots support to be lying low. This is the reason why it seems that the FCT minister is having his way. Because the governor refused to allow take action on the streets.
Imiaba, I guess we have a date then tomorrow, and I'm wondering whether Osigwe would like to be the third wheel. Osigwe, would you join us?
Very well, sure. That'll be fine.
Fantastic. We have a segment then. Gentlemen, thank you very much. My apologies, I have to rush you off, but we have to go now. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We'll take it too.
Well, we'll be again tomorrow, together again tomorrow, so I'm looking forward. But now we must move quickly because we have another matter on the ground that we must talk about. And this is regarding, well, hang on a second there. I'm being told that we must go on a break real quick, and then we'll come back with that conversation. Welcome back. We now move over to Johannesburg, where we have instances happening right now, and our correspondent on standby, Ongani Sisiba, is on standby in South Africa as the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa are protesting at the U.S. consulate in Johannesburg to reject what they say is aggression against Venezuela and also demand the immediate release of Venezuela President Nicolas Maduro, and his wife, Lady Celia Flores. Wangani, thank you very much for joining us. I'd like you to give us a summary of exactly what's happening at the march going on right now in Johannesburg by NUMSA.
Good morning, Mazino, and Happy New Year. We haven't spoken since, but we are here at the park where we are seeing the members of the NUMSA and also other civil organizations coming together and other South Africans coming together in what they call is a protest to the United States of America consulate, just to register their concerns about what we saw recently in Venezuela, where President Maduro was abducted by the United States and they are still in prison, so they are registering their concerns about that. So this group are going to march from here to the consulate. But let me just bring into the conversation the spokesperson of NUMSA, that is Mrs. Majola. How are you? You are here with different organizations. Can you tell us what message are you taking to the U.S.?
Good day, and thank you so much for having me on your platform. On behalf of NUMSA, the National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa is marching today, and it's also marching together with other organizations. We've invited political parties. We've already seen support expressed in the media for this march from various political parties, trade unions, and other progressive formations. And really, the main message that we want to deliver to the American government is that we believe in the sovereignty of nations, and as NUMSA, we reject American aggression. We reject the unlawful military takeover of Venezuela. We reject the kidnapping of the President and the First Lady of Venezuela, and we demand their immediate release. We will be handing over a memorandum of demands to the consulate, and really the purpose of this march, more than anything, is to highlight the issue of the sovereignty of all nations and why that is of critical importance, particularly right now in South Africa.
We have seen President Trump. He doesn't maybe listen to anyone. What do you think when we get to the consulate? Are they going to accept your memorandum?
We have picketed or marched outside the U.S. consulate for many years. NUMSA has embarked on many campaigns. Primarily, the campaigns have been around the rights of Palestinian people and the rejection of the U.S.'s support of the genocide in Gaza. So we have picketed many times at the consulate and also at the embassy. And the experience has never been good. They often do not engage. They often do not even accept them. And of course, we're not really expecting a warm welcome, particularly under this administration. But as I said, for us, it's not just about delivering the message to the consulate. It's what is more important to us is to bring attention to this matter and to sensitize South Africans about this matter and all other progressive formations, to say that we shouldn't just sit back and fold our arms and allow our sovereignty to be trampled on by foreign powers. We have a responsibility to defend ourselves. And this is of particular importance in South Africa because Trump has already been pushing a misinformation campaign against South Africa, claiming that South Africa, the black government of South Africa, is responsible for the massacre and the genocide of white Afrikaner farmers. Now that has been disproven. It's absolutely not true. It's a blatant lie. But you see, Trump used a lie to justify the unlawful takeover of Venezuela. He claimed that the president of Venezuela was leading an international drug trafficking ring, and that justified U.S. intervention. We all know that's nonsense. So given that this happened in Venezuela, it would be really naive for South Africa to think that what happened in Venezuela cannot happen here. And that's ultimately the goal of this march, to heighten sensitivity around that so that South Africans start to understand and to take note of what's happening in the geopolitical space. And yes, we have challenges. Yes, we have problems with our government. But we should never, ever, ever allow outside or external parties to make decisions for us. If we want to remove this government, then we must be the ones to remove the government. We shouldn't allow other external parties to do that for us.
Thank you so much. That was Hlubi Majola, the spokesperson of NUMSA, speaking to us how they want to draw attention to the United States of America of their grievances, especially when it comes how U.S. is treating South Africa. We know that South Africa has registered their concerns, especially about what Trump, the president of the United States, that's Donald Trump, has been saying about South Africa, especially the issue of white genocide. And we have also seen him in Davos when he was asked the same question again about the white genocide. He repeated that there is white genocide in South Africa. So these are some of the concerns that we see South Africans coming in their numbers, raising those concerns. But today's march is about these civil organizations and workers' organizations marching to the consulate of U.S. Just to give a memorandum of their concerns, especially about the Venezuela situation, the abduction of the president of Venezuela. So she said that before they marched to the same consulate, but they were not welcomed. So we expect something like that today, but they're saying that they're still going to march and see how it goes. It's now back to you, Mazino, in the studio.
Mongani Sisiba, thank you very much for bringing us that report there. And we'll continue to come to you through the course of today to see how it progresses indeed. Thank you very much, Sisiba. Now do stay tuned, because coming next, another big story. Still Breakfast Extra here. Now let's talk about this. Nigeria's youth population remains its greatest assets and its loudest frustration as well. Now, while young people dominate the streets, social media and also voter statistics, their influence within formal political structures remains very limited. Our recent political crisis, including the Rivers impeachment drama, which we just spoke about, have again highlighted a gap between youthful energy and real decision-making power. The question is no longer whether young people are interested, but whether the system is designed to include them meaningfully. So, joining us to have this conversation, I have with me, joining us via Zoom, Arthur Ugochukwu, Zonal Secretary, PDP Imo State, and also we have joining us, Honorable Aigo Buravien Igodala. Thank you very much for joining us, Honorable. He is a member representing Ovia Northeast 1 constituency, Minority Leader, Edo State House of Assembly. Gentlemen, you are welcome. Let's start.
Good morning, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Igodala.
For having me.
You're welcome. Mr. Igodala, let's start with you. I'm wondering why youth participation still feels symbolic rather than structural in Nigeria. Can you give us that answer?
Yes, youth participation is very limited, troubling so, and it is disheartening that the youth are not participating enough in politics. But I put that a lack of participation squarely at the door of the youth. Our youth have decided to engage in politics of support rather than participation. They have not actually bring out themselves enough in spite of the legal regime that have made it possible for young ones to participate in political, by way of election in political office. Our people have been so withdrawn with this lack of trust in the system, but you cannot run away from participating because you lack trust in the system, and thereby giving the other persons that you do not trust a free day to carry on as if you do not exist or you do not matter. I would urge younger people to show more interest in contesting for election, because even these young people, we do not even vote enough. The last time young people actually came out to vote was during the 2023 presidential election, and the apathy that followed after the desire for a particular candidate did not materialize was very loud in the negative. So I want to urge people to participate by way of contesting, that means young people now, by way of participating in election from the councillorship position to the presidential position. There's too much layback, too much I don't care, too much it is not possible. I want to say that it is possible if you dare. And daring is the only way to solve this problem of youth exclusion from governance of Nigeria.
Now, Mr. Igodala, I'm wondering exactly how you mean when you say that youths are not daring, because it seems like the system is rigged up against them when you look at how hard and how difficult or expensive it is to actually participate in politics. I don't know if you agree with me. Arthur, don't you agree? I mean, if you look at the situation, the entire youth population is the largest in Nigeria, but when you juxtapose that with our political system, you find out that there is very little representation there. Do you think that it's rigged against the youth, Arthur?
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me this morning. And I want to agree with you totally. Because if you look at the Nigerian youth demography, we have about, we have well over 60%. Over 60% of Nigerian youths below the age of 35. That is, in fact, that is a figure that is on record. Nigeria is actually a young country among the world nation because of our youthful strength. So with this, our youthful demography, it is very difficult to keep the youths aside as it regards to policy and decision making. The youths are not just critical lead stakeholders. In fact, every policy of the government should at least focus on the youth based on our population. If you have 100% and then out of that 100, over 60% are made up of people below 35 years of age, you should put a signal to the government and to the government that this particular population should not be taken for granted. I will not agree that the youths are not showing interest in leadership, but I will agree that the system has made it so that the youth will be discouraged in so many ways. And I will have examples to that. I come from a state, from Imo State. Election happened sometime last year, 2023, council election. For the first time in over almost 20 years, youths came out to participate in that election. People came out to buy form. The government in the state, the APC government, discouraged the youths by selecting, instead of organizing or arranging for a proper election to be done, instead of arranging for proper primaries to be done, they wrote names of their preferred persons, put them on the ballot. On the day of election, materials did not come. That's a hatchet system. It's a system that is bent on destroying the and most of the people that came out to participate in that election for over 20 years, we've never had a council election. So those youths came out to at least have a few days to feel themselves in as little as councillorship. And the names were written in the government house, and that was very, very discouraging on the part of the youth. So it's not because the youths are not interested. It's not because the youths are chasing shadows. No. The youths are ready to stand and make their voices be heard. But the system has strangled them to the extent that they are losing hope in the country. Look at unemployment rate in Nigeria. It's part of the things that is affecting the youth from getting by. You graduate from the university, you will not find a job. They will want to give you to come and maybe somebody advertises a job for you to come and apply. They will put the experience for 10 years. How can somebody who graduated 2 years ago have 10 years experience to qualify to get a job? So the system is skewed against the youth. But that notwithstanding, we're not going to fold our hands and watch things go the way they are going. I have been of the opinion, I've been of the view that the youths must not sit back and allow food to be put in their mouth. You must sit up and be counted. You must wash your hand first so that you be called to the dining table. I lead a very strong youth organization in Nigeria that has been advocating for this, for youth inclusiveness in government. So that we can bridge that particular gap.
Arthur, you've just said the word that I was hoping that you weren't going to say, because here in Nigeria, we have a very big advocative youth population. Frustration begets advocacy. Advocacy seems like visibility when it comes to youth power, but it doesn't translate into formal political office or political effort by the youth. And I'm wondering exactly what has to change before advocacy becomes formal political power for the youth. What must happen?
Well, what must happen? What must happen is that the youth will have to, at all cost, at any point in time, in fact, against all odds, to raise their head against the system that is working against them. First of all, I was trying to say earlier that I was leading a youth organization that says the name of that organization is Leaders of Today Global Youth Forum. First of all, we must remove that mentality that we're leaders of tomorrow. So we started that amplification of the youth voices by saying that the youths are not leaders of tomorrow, because the tomorrow they say is promised to no one who is not prepared for it. So we expect the youth to take up the challenge that we are now leaders of today, not tomorrow, so that you can remove that mindset that tomorrow is coming to you. When the people that are working against you have told you since 65 years of Nigerian independence that you are leader of tomorrow, and that tomorrow seems not to come. So if you remove that mindset, that will have to start with mental reorientation. So when you change that mindset that you are not expecting any tomorrow to come, you're not expecting any kickback, any 5,000 from any politician in the next election to decide whether you want to run or whether you want to vote who is right or who is not right, that will be our first stepping stone. Because most times the youth sit back. They don't want to participate because they think or they feel that the system is going to work against them, or they feel that INEC is not going to conduct free and fair election. But you must step out, first of all, to see that happen. Yes, we agree that the system is against the youth in Nigeria. I agree that with all honesty. If we begin to change our mindset as the youth and begin to see that this thing is not how it is, that we need to sit up and do that which we have not done before, that will give us what we actually expect.
Mr. Ighodalo, I don't know if you agree. How can the youth actually transform that protest power, that online advocacy power, to real, actual political power? Do you have any suggestions?
I will come from a very practical point of view as a present member of the Edo State House of Assembly and as a participant in politics and these very workings in this state since 1999. I will agree. I will be dishonest if I say that there are no hurdles to becoming an elected member. I'm emphasizing election now. Participation in election as contestants, not as voters. I will not say that there are no hurdles, but again, is there any endeavor in human life that you don't have challenges?
Can we take the Edo State system
for level of energy?
Can we take the
if we put the level of energy we put into advocacy on social media, if we put the level of participation we put into pursuing clout in the social media, if we prepare ourselves the way we do when we are looking for a job in banks and other organizations, if we as youth apply ourselves to political participation the way we do in the pursuit of our education in the various higher institutions of learning, we will triumph. The fact is that most youths come into the issue of politics with this sense of despair that, oh, it will not happen, they will not allow it happen. Please, like I used to tell my friends, you cannot be talking about death until you are born. You have to be on earth first before you start talking about...
Yes. Just a second. I wanted to take a sample from the Edo State instance where you belong, where you operate as a politician yourself. First of all, can I define you as a youth? Are you a youth? And if you are, how many of you are in that entire system, if you're going to give a percentage? And how does the system encourage the youth to actually participate? If you can tell us in detail, maybe we'll understand where you are coming from when you say the youth are the ones who are lackadaisical.
I will not qualify as a youth today because I'm approaching 50, but I started off as a youth.
Okay.
And I remain focused and I fought on until results was gotten. In my House of Assembly, we have a fair representation of the youth bracket of the 24-member House of Assembly. I'm sure not less than 9 of them will qualify as youths. But be that as it may, I agree that there are hurdles to be surmounted. I agree that nobody is making it easy for the youth. But what I'm saying is that the youth are not doing enough to make those things happen because the youth demography in Nigeria has the power to actually determine who becomes what. And each time the youth have actually risen up to say, this is what we want, they've always gotten it, but they have not said that as far as political participation is concerned. They have left the issue of governance to those that are interested, haven't condemned it as a matter, a no-go area, a sector that is populated by corrupt people, in quotes, and the people who do not mean well for the people, so will not deal with it, will not do anything with them. What I'm saying is this: if the youth actually arise today, the way they do on social media, if you see how, when they bring up comments, when they bring up issues of national interest, and the way they pursue it, the level of views that are expressed, the level of innovation, the level of intellect that are expressed over things that I will say in quote mundane, you will be surprised that why are they not channeling this energy to the very core issue that determines their existence, that determines their growth, that determines what they are going to eat tomorrow and how they are going to sleep today.
Okay then. Okay then.
So many people, so many youths, I dare say, are not interested about government, and that is what we cannot emphasize too much.
Okay,
we must beg people to come out from their cocoon and participate in elections.
All right,
people should be able to go to their various wards.
All right,
they should be able to participate at their local government level and even at the state level to determine who rules them and who governs them.
Thank you, Agobarivian. But let me just real quick. Arthur, do you qualify as a youth and do you agree, real quick, in summary, what you think about Agobarivian's comments just now?
Yes, I qualify as a youth.
There you go.
And I believe that a democracy that listens to its youth secures the future. Well, the government has a lot to do in making sure that the youths are carried along. I want to use the bill that they passed sometime, Not Too Young to Run bill. When they passed that bill, I was not so much impressed. Because if you had said not too young to lead, I would agree with that. Take, for instance, you come to House of Representatives now, or you come to the State Assembly, you ensure that a certain quota must be allocated to the youth. That is certain. You ensure that, like we have in political parties, we have offices reserved for youth leaders. You make sure that those that are in that office are strictly youth of a certain age or within the age of youth demography. But even in some political parties, you will see 70-something, 80-something years old being in the position that is meant for the youth. You see the Minister of Youth not qualified as a youth. So these are part of the school system, I say, that are working against the youth demography in Nigeria. So if it becomes a thing of policy that whoever that must be a Minister of Youth must be below the age of 35, you are then encouraging the youth. You are giving them a ladder to climb.
All right. Thank you very much, Arthur. We are out of time, but I actually do like your submission there, and I'm wondering whether Agobarivian agrees to that, a quota specific for youth of a certain age inside of the House instead of growing old with it. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. I did enjoy this conversation. I do remember advocating for that bill, not too young to run, a couple of years ago, and it was a very interesting process. Once again, thank you very much. We do hope that we find a democracy that actually does not sideline the youths, because that risks stagnation. The challenge is not passion, it's actually access. If you give the youths access, I'm sure the design, well, it'll design itself. Thank you very much. And for us now, we'll move on to our next conversation here inside of Breakfast Extra. Do stay with us. Welcome back. What a day, what a morning for Breakfast Extra here. It's back-to-back conversation, and yet we have another one. Now, calls to amend Nigeria's Electoral Act have returned to the spotlight, following criticisms from key political actors, including former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, who's been very vocal about it. The argument is simple. While reforms were promised, critical loopholes still remain. From electronic transmission to dispute resolution and also enforcement, the integrity of ballot continues to shape public trust in elections. With 2027 on the horizon, the urgency is clear. So, joining us to have this conversation, Kunle Lawal, Executive Director of Electoral College Nigeria, to help unpack what needs fixing and why it matters. Kunle, we apologize again for keeping you so long, but thank you for staying because this is a very important conversation. Kunle, let me start by asking, yes, let's go right to it. What exactly needs to change? What are the critical gaps inside of the Electoral Act today?
Well, there are lots of things that need to change in the Electoral Act. It would be vague if I just mentioned one or two, so I'll try to run a few things across. The first thing will be campaign finance enforcement deficit, and I think Section 88 to 91 clearly stipulates campaign spending limits and donation thresholds. Now, the act has been weak real time and enforcement has not been granted. And this is because INEC, of course, seems to not have the operational independence and the forensic capacity to audit campaign. And the sanctions, most will the fines or whatever, they are weak relative to scale of violations. So campaign limits on, I'll give an example. Say running for president is $1 billion naira. And you have every presidential candidate preceding 2023 primaries that was held in 2022 had already exceeded that amount. So the enforcement of campaign finance limits are treated more like advisory than being binding to candidates. I also think that in relation to primaries, the Electoral Act clearly regulates general elections, but doesn't really regulate party processes. And that's where there's this big issue. Mm-hmm. Now, it doesn't enforce uniform standards for internal party democracy. It does not criminalize inducement, delegate buying, or monetization of primaries. It also requires a transparent publication of delegate lists and voting results, but this is never done. The Electoral Act even goes as far as stating that no convention of primaries can be done without a full submission of the what they call it, the physical and electronic copies of party members submitted by all political parties. None of the 18 political parties met this in 2023. There's also around the technological fear and its accountability. Now, Beavers, of course, as we've seen, is recognized, but its use is not clearly defined. There's no consequence for INEC when officials fail, when technology fails due to negligence. It does not specify escalation protocols when Beavers or IREF fail systematically like it did in 2023. Then it leaves room for a little discretion without accountability. I would also say a part I normally look at, which I think brings a lot to my mind, is the fact that electoral offences lack an independent prosecutor. So you buy a ballot or you sell a ballot, and these are clear things that happen. But despite years of advocacy, there's no clear cut. Just says this will happen. Okay. And this will happen. So impunity always persists. Yeah, go ahead.
Kunle, I'm going to come back to transmission as you were talking about from before. I found that very interesting. But one thing I found more interesting is that your reference to INEC being involved in party constitution, internal party politics. I'm wondering why that is absolutely necessary. Don't you think that would be very intrusive of the national body?
No. The statement I made was there's weak regulation. There's all the regulation in the Electoral Act is around general elections. There's weak regulation for political parties.
Okay.
And that weak regulation leads to the issues we have in primaries, like inducement, multi-primaries, as you've seen across Nigeria.
So how do you expect INEC? How do you expect INEC to get involved? What exactly do you want INEC to do regarding? What should be the case regarding INEC's involvement here?
Okay, if you're stating a primaries, and I've been part of the primaries, conducted one, I've won a primaries. If you're conducting a primaries, INEC number one have who the stipulated state or federal party officials are. How do you have, like, I'll give an example with the Edo State APC primaries. There were multiple primaries held. How is that even possible? And this is because the Electoral Act does not allow INEC regulate. We don't need interference from INEC. What we need is a little regulation within the system of primaries. Because if your primaries is riddled with corruption, vote buying, you're already setting a precedence for your general elections. So we're not saying INEC should interfere fully, but there should be a little regulation around party prep, because that's where everything begins.
So I had a few conversations with people from outside regarding this conversation that we're having now, and they wanted to ask this very interesting question here, which I wrote down. Somebody asked that I should ask, how did the current Electoral Act affect the ability of candidates and also voters to challenge disputed results in court? This is about access to justice and also election petitions, as we've seen many of our elections go to court and are decided inside of court.
So, number one, I need to state clearly here that anytime an election has to be decided by a court, the processes of democracy have failed. Critical to note. So secondly, in the Electoral Act 2022 as amended, it clearly states that if you did not participate in a primaries with the person who you are contesting the conversation with, you cannot take the person to court. And I think this was put in because Nigeria had massive litigation around elections. Everybody was suing everybody, not in the party, not in the... So now only those who participated in a primaries with someone can sue. And I think that's adjusting to our reality and what we exactly are as Nigerians and how we deal with this matter. I don't think it is restrictive. I feel those who are fully mandated to question the person's emergence as the party leader, or as the party flag bearer, should now be the ones with the onus to sue.
And then there's voter inclusion. How accommodative is the policy right now when it comes to how voters are included inside of the process? Are we welcome at all as a voter or as the electorate, I beg your pardon?
Yes, I think that voter inclusion has really moved up in the last few years. People who are living with disabilities have been fully inculcated into Nigerian voting processes. And it keeps getting better, as we've seen over the years. And I must say that inclusion within our political processes has been good. I think what has been weak and what remains weak constantly has always been the education of the average voter. The average voter does not understand what jurisdiction of office and how the person should campaign. We don't even know what a good manifesto is. So I think voter education has been the poorest factor and the biggest failure of INEC. The Electoral College and a lot of other organizations exist because of that poor action. But I must clearly state that with a 97 million voter base, and the fact that we cannot even produce 28 million people participating in elections, it's a bigger problem. And we have bigger problems than inclusion. I think the fact that INEC was morally wrong last election, not legally wrong, stating they were going to provide more electronic transmissions. They didn't. So like I said, they were morally wrong. So they they lost some social currency, it would really be a problem getting quite 28 million people to participate in the 2027 election.
I'll still like to double down on this. There's a few key issues when it comes to voter inclusion here and also participation. There's displaced persons, and also ID requirements. There's persons with disabilities, which you mentioned already. There's young and first-time voters. I don't know how much consideration is being given to education of young and first-time voters. I personally have seen situations where these people have been taken advantage of. There's technology and infrastructure. We're coming to that. And there's also enforcement when it comes to people living with disabilities. But let's go back to young and new voters' education. How much of this process is being attended to as we speak? How much of this has to change when it comes to inclusion of these sets of people?
I'll be clear. The Electoral College has gone back into, the Electoral College Nigeria has gone back into approaching secondary schools to create electoral college clubs, which will help improve that particular. But our work is minimal. Our work is not as massive as it should be. Still, INEC's education of voters is very poor. National Orientation Agency seems to be absent. Those, I think they have a degree in producing skits. There hasn't been much done on that by most people. Most people have been targeting, the older, the more need adults, as between the range of 30 and above. We have been focused on that particular, but I think it's quite too little work. We've also compressed the entire way if democracy walks into a small book and try to give it out free. But they're still in the process of doing that and trying to engage the younger voters, try and get maybe some of their stars and people they look up to have these conversations, to get into this conversation. But I would say generally in Nigeria, education of first-time voters, I think Nigeria is participating at, let's say, about 4.1%.
And it's not just the new voters, it's actually people who are also living in rural areas or people who are less educated. During elections, we find that we have these visuals of people exchanging their votes for bread or rice, or it doesn't seem logical, but at the end of the day, when you look at it, it actually is a thing where it's lack of information or lack of voter education. How much effort is being put when it comes to these rural areas, these less educated people? What needs to change in that regard as well?
I'd like to point out something. I think that within the rural areas, people are just transparent with what they're exchanging their votes for. According to statistics, the middle class, and that's me and you, translate our votes for things that are even more irrelevant, like whether the person is a female or a male, or the person comes from our side, or I built a website, or the affiliation of my friend to getting an appointment when that person gets into power. We translate, also all of us translate our votes for certain gains in Nigeria. We can't pick on the rural area and say they're exchanging. Yes, they might be exchanging directly for cash, but we too exchange for contracts to print posters, we exchange for building websites for politicians, for doing a lot of things, running bots for them, running different AI for them. We do all these things. So why do we pick on the rural, the people in the rural areas and then use them as an example? Now, as regards voter education going across both sides, I think that the middle class generally is the most politically uneducated set of people in Nigeria. And this is not, let me not use the word think, we actually have statistics to back this up. So generally, I think there's a general, we put it, political illiteracy in Nigeria at 82%. So in my clear vision of how things are, Nigerians are just generally politically illiterate. And if you follow the conversations on social media, you'd imagine an argument that starts, let's say, in Plateau State, which I found funny, was whether a state governor was stronger than a party chairman. What is even bringing that argument? So let's not pick on the rural areas. Nigerians are generally politically illiterate. A lot of work has to be done within that fact, and it's the reason we exist, and we're trying to continue to expand our outreach and performing on all fronts.
I hear you, Kunle. Forgive me, Kunle. We all are guilty then. But Kunle, let's look, in retrospect, let's look at 2023 and the elections from then. Let's talk about the gaps and the loopholes that you have identified now. And if we apply them to what we have as a result, do you think that there would have been any difference in what we have currently as the result?
Yes. I think that if we are able to, so this is the problem. We are more concerned with the outcome of an election than we are concerned with the process in which an election goes on.
But isn't that's what an election is? It's all about outcomes, isn't it? Well, elections are all about outcomes.
Yeah. No. They're all about outcomes. But you see, the outcome is already rigged. The processes are rigged. So going back to party primaries, as long as there's money inducement in party primaries, as long as political parties are not held accountable for having a correct primary, as long as statutes or laws which are within the Electoral Act are not met already in party primaries, it means it means generally that the election outcome will already be rigged or will be mismanaged. Mm-hmm. And that's the position you would have. Because there's no other way. There's no other way that we can achieve this. So what do we need to do? First and foremost, we need to ensure that political parties maintain strict adherence to how candidates are being picked. Every primary should be monitored clearly by INEC. The claim is monitored by them, but I don't know how that goes on. Clearly should be monitored by INEC, and clearly should be financial misappropriations happening with delegate buying, vote buying, and should be stopped at the primaries level. If that's stopped at the primaries level, I can tell you that the outcome in the elections will be totally different. Mm-hmm. It is clear beyond reasonable doubt that we have done the same thing in trying to improve a better elections, but we have never faced our primaries. Number one, Nigeria even has poor political party participation for the population we have. We have a 97 million voter population, no political party can boast of 250,000 due-paying members. That is a big problem. So who's actually selecting who? So in Nigeria, we do not have, and I've said this before, we do not have an election, we have a selection. And that's the truth.
Okay. Well, if you ask me, Kunle, I'll tell you that the biggest problem when it comes to Nigerian elections is transparency. And that's why you'd find most people sitting at home on election day and saying that they're not going out to vote. So I'm wondering what reforms have to happen when it comes to transparency and also voter accreditation. That seems to be one of the biggest issues in Nigeria.
Yes, I think we're doing fine with divers. We just need to get better servers, improve the service of INEC. I think we're fine with divers. Now, as regards to what reforms need to happen, I think first reform would be a massive punishment on misinformation, which is our biggest problem. But before we even get to that, let's start with the top. Top will be first an independent prosecutor on electoral offenses. INEC is definitely incompetent and totally not ready for that kind of conversation. So we should have someone who prosecutes strictly electoral offenses. Then we can start with vote buying. We can adjust the fines and the punishments on that. We should be able to discredit any politician caught with exchanging funds for votes, with a total 10-year ban on politics. We need to have stronger measures and enforceable measures. There shouldn't be measures seen because you are this or because you are that, or you can get away with this or you can get away with that. So the independent prosecutor is clear. Secondly, it should not be a choice of INEC. The Electoral Act should be changed to automatic transmission or electronic transmission of results, because the major anomalies occur within transmission of results between collation centers and the actual central collation center. That's when all the magic comes in elections.
Mm. So I'm wondering what happens if we do not fit in these gaps before 2027. What kind of outcomes do you think we should expect then?
Well,
that's a very tricky question, and I'm wondering whether you'll fall for it.
Well, your regular outcome. Somebody will come and take a party ticket that's not supposed to get it. Money is going to be exchanged during the primaries. We use dollars now. I want to really see whether I'll move up to pounds in these primaries. so that's what will happen. Thirdly, INEC will have staggered results presentation. INEC cannot comprehensively. They can tell us this results here, but they can't comprehensively break it down.
I guess what I'm really asking is, with the change of the INEC chairman, are we going to see anything different? Have we put in place any reforms so far since he has become INEC chairman? And I'm referring to Dr. Amopitan now. Are we going to see anything drastically different in 2027?
There's been no reforms, and because you change the cook of the kitchen doesn't mean that the spaghetti you are making, as long as you're not buying meat, you're not buying sauce, and it's going to be sweet because you poured red oil inside. And if you keep pouring red oil, you have the same result, regardless of which cook is actually cooking it.
Well, Kunle, I want to say thank you very much for that very interesting analogy there to end our conversation. And well, let's continue to see what exactly happens come 2027. Democracy does not fail in one day. I mean, it erodes over time. So if we do not act between now and then, I guess, hey, we're in trouble then. Fixing the ballot is about restoring belief. And that's what we need in Nigerian electoral system currently. Thank you very much, Kunle. And one more question, please. Do you have any red oil I can borrow? I'm joking. Thank you, Kunle. We'll talk next time. Stay tuned. Now we've got more, at least the next 1 hour coming your way instead of Breakfast Extra. We'll be back. Welcome back, in time for our extra special piece. Now on Breakfast Extra. Now they say language is power, and last week Nigerian expressions like abeg and amala found a new kind of validation, officially added to the Oxford English Dictionary. Now, this recognition goes beyond slang. It reflects migration, culture, influence, and the way Nigerians continue to shape global English through everyday speech. So to have this conversation with us, we have Kingsley Uwanyi, consultant at the Oxford English Dictionary and senior lecturer at the University of Nsukka, Nigeria. You're welcome. Thank you very much for joining us, Kingsley. Good to have you here.
Thank you, Mavi. Thank you so much. It is always my pleasure to be here with News Central.
Fantastic.
Especially to discuss this topic.
Yes. So we should celebrate now, shouldn't we? Well, but every year Nigerian words get added to the Oxford Dictionary, but this year's one is actually very interesting. Words like abeg, which I thought should have been there since, but then again, there's one particular word which I'm allowed only to say once that made it into the Oxford Dictionary. And I'm wondering what kind of influence a word has to have before it's accepted. The word nyash, for instance, was one word that made it in. How is this possible, and why does it make it in on this set of words making it in 2026?
Yeah, thank you so much. You started by saying we should celebrate. Yes, I think the celebration should have started a long time ago, because this has been happening for a long while. But I think it was in 2020, early 2020, January 2020, that the OED added a long list, a list of Nigerian English words. That was about 26 of them, 28 of them at the time. And since then, they did another one in 2024 and in 2025. This last one actually was added in the update of December 2025, but it became public knowledge in this January. Yeah, so it's been happening. And to now address your question more directly is what qualifies a word, if I should rephrase your question that way, to be added. And I would say many things, but the most important one is use. Is this word being used by people? Yes, then that is when the word comes to be considered. Now, what the OED does is that it has a system that traces words, new words that are used across the English-speaking world that are not already in the dictionary. And when this word pops up, they try to see where is this word spoken, which country or countries are these words spoken, and how are they used, what do they mean? And then they begin to assemble the meaning. So they want to see that this word is actually a word that is in use, They want to see that the meaning of the word is relatively clear, all right? Perhaps apart from the word of the year for most dictionaries, 6-7 actually last year, which is not a Nigerian English word, by the way, was used across the English-speaking world globally, all right? Which the meaning is difficult to be pinned down, but generally they want to, OED wants to be clear that the meaning of the word is clear, that the word is being used, and that the word has been used for a sustained period of time. And there is evidence, because that's the most important thing. The OED does not create its own sentences. No, what it does is that it goes to text, social media, music, anything they can lay hold, they can make reference to say, yes, this word is used by these people in this context. So they need to guarantee that all these criteria are satisfied before that word will be added.
So Kingsley, cultural influence has to be one of them as well. How we've affected, or cross-cultural influence, how we've affected other cultures and how these other cultures actually have accepted that word. You did say English. I'm wondering whether it's just the English-speaking countries that have to have accepted these words, or if it should span across different cultures apart from English. That's one question, but let's be done with that first.
Now, these words are characterized as Nigerian English words for a reason. And the reason is that they are predominantly used in the senses that the OED has added them by Nigerians. So first of all, what they are looking, if they find out that the word is used predominantly in Nigeria, they are likely going to characterize it as Nigerian English. But is this word used by people in that country? That is the first thing. But we do know, for example, that words travel. There's no word that starts its life and finishes its life in a particular country, especially in a globalized world where it is easy for people and ideas and words to travel, right? The word we did mention, which is of course the most interesting one, and I put interesting in quotes, among the least added one is the word nyashi, right? Right, which actually, if you look at the OED definition, one of the examples in the list of examples actually comes from Kenyan newspapers, right? And what that tells you is that this word is even though it is characterized as Nigerian, even though it is predominantly used in Nigeria, has traveled across Africa. And we know what is causing this travel: cultural productions, music, movies, right? And you know that Nigeria is huge, Nollywood is huge, Nigerian music industry is huge. Not just across Africa, but also globally. So cultural influence, cultural capitalism is also important in what popularizes this word. For example, the word we're just talking about is popularized even within Nigeria. It's popularized by movies and music.
Kingsley, I'm very curious about that word. I'm also very curious about another word and how it applies that they have been, longevity is where I'm going. These words have been used over decades. Abeg, for instance, is a very common word, which I've heard for all 4 decades of my entire life. And I'm wondering why only up until now is it being added to the dictionary. The N-word is another one. Pangulu is another word. It's been around. And even these words crossed cultures through music, like Afrobeat and Fela, whom before the internet age had carried these words across countries, across continents, and was well known themselves. So why did it take that long for it to be recognized?
All right, I like that question. And this is something I sometimes that my students get confused when you teach them about, that the dictionary, the language is before the dictionary. The language is bigger than the dictionary. The dictionary is just a book, right? Traditionally speaking, that documents how language is used. It's not the language itself. And you imagine there are several dictionaries in the world, isn't it? But it's just OED that is doing what they are doing with Nigerian English and, of course, whatever itself. So what's happened to their dictionaries? It's just about those who are managing that dictionary. They've not come up to see that. So words actually live their lives, sometimes for centuries. And this is something that comes up a lot, right? When in our discussion, for example, when we're adding the word japa, all right, we could only find evidence of that word being in use dating back to like 2019. I'm not sure now. I'll find the date. But did that word start its life in 2019? The answer to that is no. But the OED is looking at examples. Can they find example where, so a word sometimes, okay, the earliest example we found for Jakba was 2018, but we do know that this word has been in existence before then. All right. So, but this is the earliest example they could find when the word began to enter written, because most of the evidence the OED used actually comes from written evidence. So, but also one of the things that when it comes to a bag, for example, especially the pidgin words, is that we have to place a difference here between Nigerian pidgin, which is also called Niger, and then Nigerian English. A bag is Nigerian pidgin word. One of the other words that's been added is biko, for example, which is an Igbo word. So these words have existed either in Igbo or Yoruba or Hausa or pidgin before now. But the OED is looking at how they have now transformed into being used in English. Right. So the context in which they are used, it has become clearly English. If you look at Abi, for example, the first example comes from Ben Okri's novel, Flowers and Shadows. It says, if one doesn't talk, it doesn't mean one is foolish. Abi, right? So you find that that sentence is English. Everything about that sentence is English. The only thing that looks pidgin there is Abi. So because of that, we can't say that Abi is pidgin. The Abi is English. But the word itself was borrowed from pidgin. So what happens most times is that for many of us who are Nigerians, these words have lived with us as Yoruba words. These words have lived with us as Bini words, as Hausa words, as pidgin words. But their history in English may not be as far as their history in pidgin or their history in the other Nigerian languages. I don't know if that makes sense.
I totally understand what you just said there, and I do agree with you. But then there is another issue to take a look at here, and it has to do with influence. Tribal influence in Nigeria. Which tribes are responsible for most words? How do I put this again? Which tribes are responsible for the most words added to the dictionary? We've got many languages. So I'm asking which is the most influential tribe that has been responsible in adding words to the dictionary?
Well, I'll use language groups, right? And trying to intentionally avoid the word tribe.
Go ahead. Right? Yes, I understand.
So, we know the big three, as it is called in Nigeria, which is language majoritization, which is also language minority. Because when Nigeria, for example, recognizes 4 official languages, isn't it?
Yes.
English, Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba. That is marginalization, because what that means is that you're saying that the other over 500 languages are minority, are small, are not important. So I don't want to go into that.
Okay.
But we also know that it's about numbers, right? It's about numbers. So these 3 language groups, Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba, they have the numbers. That is the truth, and they have the influence. So I would think that you will see that most of when you talk about Jakba, when you talk about Abi, when you talk about Biko, many of them come from these 3 languages. Suya is there, and which comes from Hausa. So you see that it numbers matter. If, for example, you are in a group, and in a group of 10, and 8 of them say we want to do this, it's likely that the group will do that. So that's why I say numbers matter. So these 3, but that does not mean in any way that the other languages are less important. Every language, as linguists, we acknowledge that every language is important to the people who speak them. If they are not important to you, that is your business, but it is important. Every language is important to people who speak them. But these 3 languages, Hausa, Igbo, and Yoruba, are really, really influential. Think of the cultural capital, I would say this is my personal opinion, of Nigeria is Lagos. Lagos is the cultural capital of Nigeria. Everybody wants to go to Lagos. Everybody wants to work in Lagos. Everybody wants to do something in Lagos, isn't it? And that comes with something. It is not just about the money that's in Lagos. So when this comes, it's about the language as well. So Yoruba is hugely, hugely influential in Nigeria. In fact, there's this German professor who writes a lot about English in Nigeria and has argued that most of the words we say are Nigerian English, actually Lagos English, so to speak. And there's a thing like that in scholarship, right? And that tells you how culturally influential Lagos is. So Yoruba is there, Igbo is there, and Hausa is there, but as well as the other languages.
Okay. So how much more culturally influential is Nigeria generally at adding these words to the dictionary when compared to other African countries?
Nigeria is huge. And again, I use that phrase, numbers matter. We are the most populous country in Africa, the most populous country, black country in the world. And it's not just about the number, but also about the influence. Nigeria is really influential. Think of Nollywood. Nollywood, I think in terms of production, is the third largest movie industry in the world after Hollywood and Bollywood. All right, think about music industry. Talk about the influence of Nigerian hip-hop artists. We can mention names, right? But we do know, for example, the N-word, borrowing your term, we're talking about, we do know how much this word is used in contemporary Nigerian music. And this travels all over the world. There's hardly any year, for a long time now, you see Nigerian artists. You see Thames, you see Wizkid, you see Davido, you see many of them, right?
Yes.
Making the list of the best of the best and the most respected music awards, Grammy, name them, in the world. That is something that shows you that Nigeria, for example, I think some years ago, Davido held a show in London, I think in O2 Arena, and it was filled to the brim. Weeks before the ceremony, the tickets ran out. That is something. See Nigerian musicians traveling across the world, they close stadiums, they close music halls. And that is something. It's not Nigerians coming from Nigeria to attend those shows. It's actually people from all over the world. And that comes with some people listen to this. And music is, even though music is primarily rhythmic, but it's also culture, it's words.
It's not just that, it's also capital. It's big capital. Yeah. But what can we do with that? Whether socially, whether politically, noting that we have the attention of the world when it comes to designing how the world sees language or language from Africa. What can Nigeria do with it?
A lot, actually, a lot. The creative industries, for example, is a huge market. And this is something that the government should tap into. Nigeria can become the cultural capital of the world because we have the resources, we have the talent, we have everything it needs to be able to get to that. And we can see that already manifesting. And that is money, just to speak in that basic sense. That's money that we can tap into. We can make people come to that. And I know something is already happening. Actually, there is something that happens in Lagos now. It started recently called Dirty December, right? With all the things, I don't want to go into detail, all the things around it.
Yes.
That is something is emerging, all right? It depends on how we frame it. We can frame it. We can redefine what is emerging. But last year's Dirty December in Lagos was huge. I was watching clips on social media, people traveling from all over the world, coming to Lagos in December to have to relax, to enjoy themselves, to enjoy the music, to enjoy the food, to enjoy, and we can make something huge after this. But we must do this in a very positive light to be sure that we are selling what we are selling to the world is positive, and we do have this in quantum.
All right, Kingsley, let's slow down. Let's not sell to the world yet. Let's sell to West Africa. West Africa has a culture where Pidgin English, which is where most of these words actually are incubated, come from. Yeah. And our Pidgin English seems to be one that is spoken across West Africa. It's the one thing that even facilitates trade. When you go to Cotonou, you can still speak Pidgin English and still be understood. As far as Senegal, as far as Liberia, you can still be understood as a West African. This is advantage for us when it comes to trade. Is it advantage for us when it comes to technology? And I say this with AI in mind. Do you think we can develop AI to understand our own language and build it so it perhaps grows bigger than where we have it now, as in West Africa? Maybe even include other African regions. Your thoughts?
Yes, I did a paper some years ago on West African Pidgin varieties. Yes, I completely agree. And this is something, again, it's about the economic, political, cultural influence of Nigeria across West Africa. So, for example, in 2017, the BBC started what's called BBC Pidgin. That was when that service started. And where is the headquarters? Nigeria, Lagos. And that's what I'm talking about, Lagos. And when you look at this BBC service covers the entirety of West Africa, right? Or so it claims. But then when you read their content, or even their content, video, audio, text, you find that it is like 90% Nigeria. And that is what happens. So Nigeria holds the power. So if we realize that we hold this power, we can make good use of it. For integration, for example, I was attending a conference in South Africa, and I met Cameroonian, and I met also a Senegalese, and we spoke Pidgin. Practically effortlessly. When I'm in Ghana, I speak Pidgin on the street, and that's fine. And that's for integration. Integration. You might argue, after all, English is there, right? But integration is important for the economic integration, but also travel integration and all of that. So it is absolutely important that we make good use of that opportunity. But then the government has a role to play here. Again, when you mention Pidgin, what kind of orientation, what kind of attitudes crop out when people hear Pidgin? Mostly it is negative, all right? But this shouldn't be. It's a language of its own. In fact,
so what must we do? What must we do to sanitize the image then? And remember, I mentioned AI. I'm wondering whether this could help sanitize that image. That was where I was going, to make it more commonly accepted across the world as a language on its own, not just as an offspring of English in Nigeria.
Yes, a lot is already being done. If you go to ChatGPT and ask it, can you speak Pidgin? Now it tells you yes, even though it does so pretty much incorrectly most times. But it's about work, it's about what is put there. Of course, we know that these LLMs are trained with large data from what is available out there. So what I usually say is, how much of Pidgin texts do we have available that the AI can pull data from and be trained with? And a lot is already being done about it. I know a professor, a Nigerian professor in Canada, who just secured a huge project on making LLMs, big LLMs, become understand Nigerian Pidgin more. And there's a lot going on actually. So this can be done, and you find that ChatGPT, even Gemini, they speak at least basic Pidgin, and that tells you that this is possible. We need. I keep saying that if you don't blow your own trumpet, if you don't keep your house in order, nobody will do it. We have a lot to do as Nigerians. First of all, we should take pride in what is ours. One of the things that is ours is Pidgin. We should take pride in it. It is ours. There's nothing negative about it. In some countries, right? Pidgin variety is also an official variety. Why can't we recognize Pidgin as one of the official languages in Nigeria? There are we have more people in Nigeria speaking Pidgin than English, but English is, right? So why can't we? There's nothing wrong about it. Okay?
I mean, Creole is not an original language, is it? But it is recognized in countries where it's spoken. Am I correct?
Yes, there are countries in which Bislama, for example, is recognized as official, which is a Creole. But Pidgin also has creolized in some parts of Nigeria. In the Niger Delta areas, there are people who speak Pidgin as their first and only language.
True.
One example, a recent example I've given elsewhere to tell, because many Nigerians will say, oh, Pidgin is just English. It's just for you to break English. And that's why some people call it broken English. No, it's not. It's a different language. A recent example, I watched a clip of Pastor Paul Enenche preaching somewhere in the Niger Delta recently. I think that was around December time. He was preaching in English, and his preaching was being interpreted in Pidgin. And this is common. It's really common in the Niger. And it tells us that Pidgin is a full-blown language, and we can make something. Now, we have a few services, right? I was Googling the other time, Nigerian newspapers that publish in Pidgin. And BBC is the huge one. BBC is not a Nigerian company, it's British, right? and they are doing something bigger than what we are. I mean, they have the prestige, they have the resources, right? But we should do this. How many TV stations, how many radio stations are purely? I know there is Wazobia, for example, right? Which is pidgin. That is huge. But even mainstream media, both traditional and non-traditional, should have full services, right, in pidgin, and that is how to take pride in what is ours. We hear ministers. The other day, somebody from the royal family, British royal family, came to Nigeria and spoke English. I think that was Prince Charles then, and President Macron came to Nigeria and spoke pidgin, and we clap. How many of our Nigerian politicians are respected to speak pidgin in public? Maybe a few. We should normalize these things. It is our thing, and we should take pride in it. And I do, as a person, anywhere I go. I just they yarn my pidgin. They go as much as I can.
Abi, Naso, I beg. In fact, let's do one in a new central pidgin English outreach. That would be great. Abi, what do you think? In any case, before we go, one of the producers wanted to know, since you are a consultant for the OED, what the difference between Abi and Shebi is.
Right, that's interesting. Right, Abi simply means most of these things are used as intensifiers, right? That is to ask questions. Most times, Abi is usually used in the sense of we call it sentence adverb. Sometimes means it's clearly, it's clearly so, right? If someone says, or it's used in the terms of, okay, I know this is true, or don't you think so, right? Shebi sometimes is also used in that same sense, and is also used to ask questions. Shebi, we should go. Should we go? All right.
Okay.
Most times, these things, both of them are used in the sense of interrogatively. That's asking questions, but not necessarily asking questions that you need an answer to, but asking questions that you need to confirm that the person agrees with you, so to speak.
Okay, so Mava, just to simplify it some more, I guess Abi is a confirmation, while Shebi is an inquiry. Am I correct?
Well, in a sense, yes, but also in other senses, they are used interchangeably. Because are we going to end this program very soon? I say Abi, you can say yes.
Abi, right? we can end now.
Abi, we can end now. Then intonation is very important of the speaker, because when we have rising tone, then it becomes a question. Even I am fine can become a question. Somebody say I am fine, right? That becomes a question, even though that's traditionally a sentence.
Kingsley, this has become a very interesting conversation. They're rushing me off the air now, but I don't want it to stop. But thank you very much for being a part of this session here. I have absolutely enjoyed it. I hope the new words get added next year. Do you have any idea what word might be added?
Absolutely, yes. I was going to say that OED has now serialized it, that every December, West African English is from West Africa will be added, including Nigeria. Every December.
Fantastic. Kingsley, thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to more words inside of the Oxford English Dictionary for 2026. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Bye.
You too. I do stay tuned for our final session here inside of Breakfast Extra. We'll be right back. Welcome. It's our final segment here for Focus Africa. And today we talk Davos. Let's find out what it gave us. 2026 saw a very big speech. We'll talk about it. Global leadership conversations shifted over the week. In a keynote that sets the tone, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney spoke on cooperation, economics, resilience, and rebuilding trust in global systems. For Africa, the question is clear. Is the continent shaping the agenda, or is it reacting to it? From technology to governance and also culture and diplomacy, Africa's seat at the table is evolving. Africa is becoming that table. Joining us now to discuss this, Temilade Aladiokin, UNESCO Youth Ambassador for Culture and Peace. Thank you very much for joining us. Temi, I can call you Temi now because I know we're related somehow. Temi, good to have you here. Let's first start by asking whether Africa's voice at Davos was present at all this year. What do you think, Temi?
I think that the Africa's voice was actually heard a lot in Davos this year. Like this is an annual program that comes up, and world leaders come over here to set the pace, possibly for the year, and try to align their own countries or align the interest of their region. Africa was not left behind at Davos this year. The conversation, even though it was dominated by geopolitics, debt, sustainability, the future of global growth, one crucial point to note this time or this year is that the discussion about Africa took a different turn. It was a question of not how much capital Africa needs, but why so much existing capital continues to fail in Africa. And that was what dominated Davos for Africa this year.
Can you answer that question? Why does it fail?
I mean, the reality is clear. Africa does not face a shortage of capital. I mean, it just faces a shortage of appropriate financial architecture. I mean, look at what is going on in Burkina Faso right now and how funds are being used to develop the country. And, and that's a conversation that usually when I get into with my colleagues, it's always very effy because they're like, but that's not a democratically elected government. And, that is a problem in its own. The financing models currently shaping investment on the continent were not designed for Africa's development. A short investment tenor, high cost of capital, and rigid risk framework, these are not good for our long-term investment, which when you look at it, that's talking about transportation, housing, agriculture, and trade. The way our capital is given to us is not structured in a way that will be sustainable to us long-term. Yeah.
Now, Timmy, let's talk about the two big speeches. One of them bigger than the other. Let's talk about Trump's speech, and let's focus on Mark Carney's speech. I'm wondering whether Mark Carney's speech opened a space for African priorities at Davos this year. He shut the door on a lot of other things and opened the door on cooperation. And how does Africa play when it comes to this cooperation is my wonderment.
I mean, you're right on spot. Cooperation. Countries have to cooperate with each other. Countries have to, talk with each other. Countries have to buy and sell and trade, and cooperation between countries should be a norm. We shouldn't be closing doors to any cooperation. And what McCartney said right there, it was opening it up. And if African leaders are, smart enough, like I know they are, we should be jumping on this trend right now. We should be jumping on collaborating. We should even collaborate with ourselves within Africa. Let's talk about that. I could take a train from Frankfurt all the way to Davos, all the way to Zurich. I could do that. I can take a train from here to Accra. I can take a train from here to, from Nigeria. I'm talking about Lagos now. I can take a train from Lagos to Accra. There are a lot of things that we need to do that I feel like McKenna was trying to just buttress out to say, this is the time for us to collaborate and cooperate with each other.
So Trump said, we're big and we can bully you into doing whatever we want, that you better join our coalition. Carney said, we're small and together we can make a big impact. Where does that leave African countries? Who must they at this time adhere to when it comes to cooperation?
Very, very tricky one right there.
Yeah,
but,
I know.
America, country with great with great, resources and ability to be able to foster cooperation. The truth of the matter is how the president of the United States sees cooperation it sees that from a standpoint of we own the world, we rule the world, you have to toe in line. But then that would work in certain sphere, certain area where corruption is ruling the day in possibly an African country, and they want to go there and make sure everything is settled and sorted for the benefit of the citizens of the country. But what I would say, what the Prime Minister of Canada is talking about is, we are small. We have to dialogue. We have to come to the table. If you have this and I can benefit from that, then let's come together. Let us do this trade by barter in a way that favors both countries, and you're not going to bully us away. No matter how we are in Africa, resources is still in our continent. All the natural resources that are needed are still in our continent, and they will need that. And you need to be able to cooperate with us and dialogue with us for you to be able to have access to those resources. Or more interestingly, we should be able to determine where we want our resources to go to. And that's also the conversation that the Prime Minister of Canada is trying to pull out here.
Exactly, but each time we try to say, okay, we want our resources to go to these friends, we sort of like get a nudge from the side saying, you sure you want to be friends with those guys? Let's take Trump, for instance, and his interest in Nigeria. We don't know exactly why he's interested, but we do know that since Africa is that table when it comes to minerals, everybody is interested in Africa. Here in Nigeria, we've got oil. We recently just said we're going to make our own and not import refined oil. So that's a big deal. That takes away petrol dollars from, America. Hence, perhaps some people say that might be why there's certain interest there. But we also have partnerships or friendships with other countries that Trump doesn't like China, You have to wonder where we now, on what side of the seesaw we must, we begin to slide toward. So what suggestions do you have for Nigeria when it comes to these partnerships? Do we go, hey, it doesn't matter who we trade with, or do we have specific considerations how the friends, the enemies of our friends could be or should be our enemies or friends? It's confusing right now.
Yeah, I mean, you're preaching to the choir. Today, Africa's role in the global economy is no longer optional. It is indispensable. By the year 2050, 1 in 4 people worldwide will be African. And the continent would hold the world's largest workforce, its youngest population, and some of its most strategically significant assets. Now, when you look at critical mineral, we have that on this continent. And in Nigeria, now I'll focus on Nigeria a little bit. Nigeria had a great presence in Davos this year, which I was very impressed. And kudos to the team that the Nigerian team that led that Nigerian house in Davos, together with the vice president of the country. It was beautiful. We had our own dialogue. We were able to talk and position what we look forward to seeing in Nigeria, meaning that we were able to connect policymakers, investors, and innovators to come and advance collaborative solution for Nigeria. That is great. That's where we should start from. But when you talk about these foreign powers, the foreign powers would only respect you when you respect yourself in the country. And that's very key. Do we even know what we have? Do we know that we have the youngest population workforce? Do we understand how strategically Nigeria is positioned in Africa? These are very key points that if you, there's an adage, I'm a Yoruba boy, and so there's an adage in Nigeria, what you call yourself is what people will call you. Now, if we do not respect ourselves enough and we are not positioning ourselves like we have the resources to give to these people, yeah, they're going to work on us. And that's when they're still going to be able to, how do I put it, to want to sideline us. Why should we pick who we want to sell our resources to? But of course, we will do that if we've gone to country number one and we've borrowed money and borrowed resources and we've mortgaged the future of the country or to that country. And you now want to turn, another regime comes and wants to start selling resources to country number three. Country number one is going to tell you, hey, remember what decision, or look at what we agreed on 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And this is then now we start being pawns in the hands of these people. You know, it's very critical that we do not just end the conversation in Davos, but continue use Davos as a stepping stone to continue to make that discussion.
Temi, I think no one has ever explained mortgaging the future better than you just have right now with that analogy. I want to say thank you very much for that, and thank you very much for having this conversation with us. We do hope that we make the best choice when it comes to partnerships henceforth, and that we stop this mortgaging of our future, especially when it comes to foreign partners. Thank you, Temi, Mr. Aladiokin, for joining us. Yes, and of course, we'll continue to come to you as a resource for these conversations. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And of course, that's it for us here on Breakfast Extra. I'm a lone rider today, but it was a very interesting one. Every single session, interesting conversation with our guests. Thank you to everybody who joined us, and also thank you to you if you have been there watching us since 8 o'clock. We're going to have another installment tomorrow morning for a Sunday here on Breakfast Extra, and we hope that you will be joining us then. It was a very heavy week, a very big one filled with plenty of activities, and out of all of that activity, we got one time and moment that we are going to have today or use today as our takeout moment. Goodbye. See you tomorrow.
Canada and the United States have a partnership in the economy, in security, and in rich cultural exchange. But Canada doesn't live because of the United States. Canada thrives because we are Canadian. News.